Hey, in today's video, we're going to be exploring the difference between the vortex and the subconscious. Is there a difference? What the heck is a vortex? And how do I get into it? So, the vortex is a way of viewing that we live in a point of attraction, right? And inside of whatever we're getting into the vortex, it's the idea of getting into alignment with source or alignment with our higher self. And a really popular teacher on this is Abraham-Hicks. And Abraham is a non-physical collective consciousness that is translated by Esther Hicks. And I love the teachings of Abraham. It feels like a very pure channel. It feels very unadulterated. I find myself going to those teachings when I want to get to the basic and the more advanced levels of understanding the law of attraction. Now, what's really interesting is that, and this is part of why I'm making this video, is like if you were to search on YouTube, or if you were to go deep into the teachings of Abraham, they don't use the word subconscious. And the tapes and recordings that I could find, typically what the response is when people are asking about the subconscious, well, first off, people ask questions, so it's kind of like a call and response, and then an answer is brought through. And typically what people are asking the question about the subconscious is they're thinking about the subconscious as if that they have these subconscious or unconscious thoughts that are, since they're not aware of them, that they're sabotaging their reality. So it's this kind of idea of like subconscious blocks. And the typical response to that from Abraham is the idea that if you're not actually conscious of it, you wouldn't even be able to feel it, and therefore it wouldn't even be a big enough player in your experience. Because it's not actually what their perspective is, it's not actually like unconscious or sub as in, I guess they're interpreting sub as in underconscious. It would actually be conscious because you're feeling it. And I think that makes a lot of sense in that it's basically the message that is being, the way that I interpret that is that not overly concerning yourself with this idea that there are things that you're not conscious of, because it creates almost like this victimization of like, there's something wrong with me that I can't see. So it's like, just blame it on the subconscious, right? And I think that the reason that message is given is the idea of us becoming more deliberate creators and becoming more aware of things that we may be labeling as subconscious that we're actually are consciously aware of. And there can be this kind of like pinning it on, oh, well, my subconscious did this. When it's like, is that actually what's happening? What is the subconscious? And that's where this idea of this vortex, of this vibrational reality, where inside of our consciousness at the deep levels, there are these active vibrations that then play out in our experience. And that for a lot of people, what we're calling subconscious is actually just repressed emotion, or just ignoring that we actually can feel when our vibration is off. And that there are things that we can actually do consciously to deliberately work with our vibration. Now, I understand all of that, and here's another perspective. So when you look into the teachings of Neville Goddard, Joseph Murphy, who was like one of the preliminary people that also inspired the work of Napoleon Hill, who also talks about infinite intelligence, autosuggestion, law of attraction, and these teachings of vibration that weren't fully, like the collective was not fully receptive for in the 20th century. Now this new wave of teachings, people are more fully receptive to actually understanding the law of vibration. So I think that actually, from my perspective, that what now people are doing, this personal work and this understanding of psychology, of the conscious and the subconscious and the collective conscious, is just a framework for understanding what I believe is an ancient teaching that you actually initiated into through your own experience of realizing that no matter what you call it, there is this deeper self. So when you look at these teachings of the subconscious mind, I think that they're actually talking about the same thing as the vortex. They're talking about how the subconscious mind is a garden, that there's a receptive mode, and that the conscious mind can plant seeds of intention within that garden, and then it will reproduce in your experience through the law of attraction, through the law of vibration. And so I think that that teaching of the subconscious mind is not like, oh, I have these subconscious thoughts. It's actually looking at the subconscious mind as like a garden and as like a vibrational mix of our deeper receptive self that then replicates and reproduces whatever images are held in our imagination. So I think that not getting lost in these labels and words, because I really had to look at that. I'm like, well, I feel like that there's not a bridge here between these two concepts. So I wanted to try to broach that conversation here, that I think at the deeper levels that these are really different ways of looking at the same thing. And looking at how to work with our consciousness and how to go within ourselves and how to feel the vibrations in our vortex or feel the vibrations in our subconscious that are creating in our experience. So I feel like looking at it like the subconscious, or another phrase is like the subconscious tank. It's this idea that your body is actually the subconscious. Because if you think about it, and I did hear this in one of Abraham's recordings, but basically it seemed to me the way that they're phrasing it is that people have a lot of screwy ideas that causes them to not take responsibility. And if you were to look at like, well, what's subconscious? Like your cells are subconsciously translating all of this cellular information. Your body is subconsciously regenerating throughout the night. But I think that what is being pointed at is that you don't have to worry about that in order for it to take care of itself. Now, I'm looking at it from another perspective, which is that the subconscious is the receptive mode, is the fertile soil. And when we're in our dream state, like it's just a word, right? But it's a way of talking about when you move from that waking state, like into your sleep state, and there's a relaxation of focus. In that in-between state is very similar to when you go into meditation. So if you were to actually measure your brain waves when you're going into these receptive meditations, you would see the same kind of brain waves, the alpha, the theta waves being activated before you get into the deep, deep, deep rest. And I think that that's also a place where our mind is more receptive and that we actually connect to infinite intelligence through that. So I believe that it's like the subconscious is bottomless and actually is the imagination of God and is infinite intelligence, and that these are just different words that people are reaching for to describe that we live in a vibrational universe, our consciousness is made of vibration, our imagination interfaces with the field, and thus the images that are held get created. That's what it means, like created in the likeness and image of the imagination, or God being creator, right? And that we are made in the image of the creator, so we are each creators and have creative abilities. So it's like a way of understanding, another way of looking at the receptive mode, another way of looking at what the vortex is. And another thing that I question is this subconscious tank idea, that because this is another way of speaking about vibration, So a lot of the Abraham teachings, they're talking about feeling the vibration. They're talking about guiding your thoughts, but through feeling, and sometimes getting beyond the thought and then realizing that your thoughts are coming from your feelings. Now, another way of looking at this that I think is just another way of talking about it is that we have certain feeling states somatically come up in our body. The body and the mind are intrinsically connected. Like when you're here in this physical reality, you literally carry your body around with you wherever you go, you know? Leaving astral projection out of this conversation, and or dreaming, but when you're here, when you're awake and you're in your body, you take your body with you where you go. And what I've noticed is that certain feeling states come up in certain parts of my body that then trigger certain memories and certain thoughts. So I think that there actually is power in processing our emotions. And I think that's what people are talking about when they're talking about the subconscious mind, it's this idea of the body as the subconscious. Think of your cells regenerating. Think of how you're having these certain feeling states that are then triggering these thoughts and patterns in your mind. And then in your mind, when you are in a pure receiving, when you're able to tune in to what you're visualizing and assume it as already so, you're creating that feeling state in the body. And that's where this idea of impressing the subconscious comes from, because it's the idea that the subconscious is like a clay. So when you get into that receptive mode, the clay is receptive. When you actively visualize, appreciate, Abraham talks about making lists of positive aspects. It's another way of doing gratitude. Or doing focus wheels. It's ways of focusing your consciousness. These are all the active principle. And it's like that's impressing this clay. So Abraham talks all the time about getting your hands in the clay, but like what's the clay made of? They call it vibration. Somebody else may say subconscious mind. So I just presented this is like my perspective, because I wasn't feeling fully satisfied. As I was looking online, I'm like, well, where's this bridging of perspectives here? Because I always think for myself and have always had this tendency to question everything, because even with channelers, the stream of consciousness that they're tapping into and the questions and answers that are being brought through them are relative to their interests, right? I think so. I mean, I don't even know. Does the subconscious even exist? What do you think? I think I can feel the vibration, and I'm understanding deeper that people, it's like these are different ways of reaching for the words that represent the understanding, and that we can also bridge our own understanding and kind of like glean from what works with us. So that's about what I've got on that, because I also feel that when we do that clearing work and we open the emotional palette, it's a lot easier for us to get into the vortex, because your energy is naturally moving through your central channel and you're feeling like, and it's like not any one teacher or channeler has all of the answers. Like people are bringing through different codes, and I feel that we're all puzzle pieces of God. So that's what makes your own perspective magical and worthwhile, and how unique perspective even exists, because how boring would it be in this time of awakening to just like follow someone and just be like, they know everything. I feel like that's the power of individuation, and like taking from what we resonate with in these teachings and also working with these metaphysical tools in our own experience to be like, okay, I notice when I have these feelings coming up and I allow myself to receive them and I process them and I let go, I open up this space and I can literally feel this vortex of energy. I feel more access to my like imagination, and it's much easier to visualize. And whether you're calling them vibrational patterns or you're calling them subconscious patterns, I don't think it really matters, because it's the same thing. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts on this subject is. And this video was not meant to be as much of like a teaching thing as much of like a bridging and sharing of perspectives, because this is still something that I'm exploring, and I couldn't find anybody else who was talking about this or had this perspective. So I thought it may be of value to you, like if you were like me, like endlessly trying to look online to see if there was something that bridged these perspectives. I couldn't find anything. So all right, enjoy, peace.